Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Freight Insider. We are opening the doors in the business of freight. I'm your host, Paige Siplon. Thanks so much for joining us again. I often say that freight is the common denominator in the complicated math problem that we call our economy. Literally every business is touched by freight, but the how part of how they're impacted really varies greatly. To some companies exist to move freight, others track it, some manufacture it, others receive it and sell it to consumers. But the business of freight, regardless of how you look at it, is complicated and exciting, and frankly, a well-kept secret weapon for business here across the United States. Today, we'll be diving into the ocean freight world, and to do so, I have a very special personal friend of mine and a guest joining us. He has over 30 years experience as a proven leader in the maritime industry, working on port expansion, sustainable profit and productivity models, identifying winning sales, marketing strategies. Really has done just about everything you could think of in the maritime world and in the freight world. He's been with the Georgia Ports Authority since 2011, and for the last 5 years has served as its top leader, its top dog, and as its executive director. It's a mouthful. Today's guest is Mr. Griff Lynch. So welcome to the Freight Insider, Griff.
Thank you, Paige. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
We're glad you're here. It's great to see you again. It's been, we were just talking about, it's been a few minutes since we got together. Sorry we have to do this via video.
Right, it's okay.
But appreciate you.
Everyone's world now, so we understand. Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Well, we'll dive right in because we want to hear about your journey and then hear about what you're doing today at the Ports Authority and what your team's up to. But, you know, Griff, freight has been a part of your life. You've been on quite a journey, more specifically the ocean freight world. And from the little bit I know about you, it all started back in New York as a fellow New Yorker, which we don't probably say too often here in the great state of Georgia. But it all started with the Maritime College up SUNY New York and the Maritime College. I mean, just start off with how did you specifically dive in and decide to go to the Maritime College, and then maybe walk us through kind of what your freight journey has been like personally.
Yeah. Just Paige, first of all, I think I want to give you kudos because I'm going to speak to the group and they're going to hear my New York accent. Somehow you found a way to get rid of your New York accent.
The United States Marine Corps and being in lots of places literally took it out of me.
One of those ways.
Yeah, that's right.
I tell you, going way back when I was a young kid, probably in middle school, I went to see a training ship come back from visiting international ports. And it was at the Maritime College, and I think I was in about 7th grade, and I said right then and there, look, this is where I want to go. I had never traveled internationally. I grew up in a middle-class family, and it was just really appealing to me. And everybody's wearing their uniforms, and I just thought, wow, this is neat. And in that decision, thinking about it in high school, I always had a dream to be a tug captain or working on a ship in New York Harbor. And that was great until when I was during school, I secured a job as a cadet observer with Exxon for the summertime for about 3 weeks and realized when you get seasick, it doesn't work out so well when you work on a ship.
Hard to be on a ship. You have sea legs, right?
So we had, obviously at the school we did that. I was out on ships for several months at a time, but a tug is a little different. And it wasn't in the cards for me, but that really began my journey in the freight world. Obviously graduated school in 1988 and was looking for a job. And the first job I secured was working for a company called P&O Containers. At the time it was Transfreightline / P&O. I was stowing was a ship planner, loading container ships as a central planner. And it was really the first of its kind at the time. It came about as a result of the vessel sharing agreement, sharing vessels with P&O, Ned Lloyd, and Sealand. Really exciting job. Was a management trainee with that company. Came to Charleston, as a matter of fact, back in I think it was 1990 for a year. Worked down at the port of Charleston and booked freight. Made sure the booking list was all manual at the time, but kind of did it all at the port, and it was a lot of fun. And then went back up to New Jersey. Eventually, worked my way into Sealand, working down at the Elizabeth Marine Terminal. And rose up through the ranks there. First started, working on the dock and became a marine manager with Sealand and actually then went into sales with them and got to see a whole nother side of the business, that these just weren't containers and they really had people behind them, the customer. And that's really important to understand that and understand how that side of the business works. So got to see that. And then Maersk came along and purchased Sealand. back in 2000, and I just went right along with Maersk and became part of the APM Terminals organization, where I took over the Virginia facility in Norfolk, Virginia, and was a great opportunity to stay there about 8 or 9 years. During my time there, not only ran a small facility, but had a wonderful opportunity to be part of kind of designing and leading and building a brand new terminal. Had a whole team of people, but I was the project manager. We built a brand new facility, state of the art for North America. We were the first to put a semi-automated operation at a port or a terminal. It was great. It's a great success. Had a great team, and then moved on and kind of just continued to rise up. We took an executive role with Global Container Terminals, and then came to the Georgia ports in 2011, as you said, as the chief operating officer. So it's been a wonderful ride for me. I have seen both the sales side, the carrier side, and the terminal side of the operation, and of the ocean freight world. And it's I love the industry, love it. Wouldn't trade it in for the world.
It's a big industry.
Yes, it is. It's exciting. For sure. A lot of people, a lot of great people.
What did you like better, the container side, or the facility side, or the liner side?
Yeah, I when I was on the liner side, I will tell you, I was in the sales, and I have a great appreciation for sales folks. A lot of young people look at sales and say, oh, this is going to be great. I have a expense account. I got this, I got that. But sales, where I'm at and my personality, sales can be a very lonely place, and you're on your own, and you're not really working with a team per se. You have your numbers and your budget, and you got to go out there and deliver. And I really enjoyed it. But if I was to pick a choice, definitely operations and being down at the terminal, being part of a team was something I really enjoy much more.
Yeah, it's so New Jersey, and then New York, and then to Charleston, and then Virginia.
Yes.
You had quite the East Coast run. Ever want to get out to the West Coast?
No, I had an opportunity to in my career, and I really thought hard about it. This is about 20 years ago, and it's a great question. But I think for me, I have a large family, and so at the time my kids were quite young, and its cost of living is a lot higher. And I just said, you know what, I'm not going to do this to my family. My wife's always been there at my side, helping me move and do the kid thing and all that. But that was just a little too much. And same with international. Had opportunities to go international. I've just decided myself not to do that. But those that did highly encourage it and had great experiences that I know.
All right. So 2011, come back to the Ports Authority. You're at the GPA, and for those listeners who haven't been who've been sleeping under a rock for the past decade or so, Georgia Ports Authority is to say you're growing like a weed is probably an insult to fast-growing weeds. I mean, you guys have been setting records, and frankly, is an industry benchmark for ports nationwide. You talked about Virginia and your experience there, and Charleston, and ports in California. GPA literally setting the bar for those. For example, I'll send some of the kudos for those, again, that have been sleeping under rocks. GPA, inland barge terminals, almost 500,000 jobs throughout the state of Georgia, $29 billion in income, $122 billion in revenue, $3.4 billion in state and local taxes. Quite a private business, quasi-private business enterprise. 9.3% of containerized cargo volume, 10%, over 10% of containerized exports. So that balance, I know, is really critical to your growth and your sustainability. Yeah. So, and already I get the press releases, many of the listeners do, record after record, month after month, COVID or not, 15% over last year. How does GPA keep up with that growth? And why is GPA different than other ports beyond the ones that you just worked at?
Yeah, great question. And by the way, when I was not working at the GPA, long before I came here, I followed them, and they are obviously have had a wonderful history long before I got here, and I think that has a lot to do with the leadership that was here, and also the state and all the folks at the state. There's just this great coalescence around supporting the ports in Georgia, the likes of which I hadn't seen until I came here. And so that was the first thing. And upon coming here, I kind of learned a little bit more and could see firsthand the great and wonderful things that GPA did and does. And I think, Paige, to answer your question, what differentiates the Georgia ports? The first thing, and I think the largest thing, is that for the container facility and for the break bulk facilities, we are an operating port authority. And so we are obviously a part of the state, but at the end of the day, we're not just leasing out our land to a private terminal operator. We work in conjunction with with the ILA and the stevedores who are down on the dock, but we operate the facility. It's our systems, our investments, our capital projects, and our people who are operating the cranes and the yard cranes and helping the cargo move. And I think there's a great deal of pride, both in the GPA and outside the GPA in the state, in doing that. And I think we're pretty good at it. And as a result of that,
I'd say so.
yeah, and I think, as a result, and we have been, and I got to thank folks like Doug Martian and Curtis Foltz and Governor Perdue, Governor Deal, and now Governor Kemp, who have been fantastic, and the legislature, right, who have been fantastic in supporting the ports. But at the end of the day, the other thing that we're doing is we're looking out there and we're saying, okay, what do we need to do to continue to be relevant, and what should we invest in? And the team has done a wonderful job of staying ahead of the curve. And something the Georgia Ports has done that has lent to its success is we have invested in long lead time items, heavy capital intensive, and made a bet on the future for years now. And every time we've made a bet, knock on wood, it's come out to be successful.
Pretty good odds to bet on the GPA,
really good,
right?
Whether it's building getting new cranes and berths, but these investments are massive. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I think we like to tell folks over the last 10 years, we've invested $1 billion in our ports. And that's risky. And that's coming from our cash flow, right? That's on the GPA. We're not getting help to do that. It's on us. We run the port like a business, and we have done that for years now. And that's a good thing, because we're expected to get a return so that we can invest further. So those are the things that I think differentiate us. And then you add all that up, we got a lot of land, and what was done 20 years ago was to convince the shippers to build distribution facilities in Savannah, and also obviously Atlanta is a major part of our success.
Right.
And so having this closest container terminal to Atlanta, having a major distribution capacity right here in local Savannah, have been real strengths. And having that direct line of communication, not only with the ocean carriers, but also with the BCOs, like those that you service as well, that come to us directly and say, hey, do you have more space? We're having some challenges over here on the West Coast. Can we? Yeah, absolutely. Come on. So that's been the story of the Georgia ports.
Yeah, that's a great point. I used to say it all the time, the ports, the cargo that comes from wherever it comes from, China, Europe, all over,
Right.
A lot of it wants to come to Savannah, and a lot of large major shippers have built distribution centers and stuff in Savannah, but, it also wants to go all over the Southeast, all over, the East Coast, all over the country. And so so the investments you're talking about, just for people that aren't familiar, obviously you're improving your berths, but you're also doing a lot of, I've read some press releases, a lot of our listeners have, on the investments that maybe you don't think as much of a port investing in. Like you said, hundreds of millions of dollars. I know your rail facilities on terminal and also outside the Savannah area, maybe up in the Northeast Georgia area.
Yeah,
maybe talk a little bit about that.
About 4 or 5 years ago, we embarked on converting our existing on-dock rail, which was good for its time, but we were quickly filling up and needed to advance it and create more capacity. We decided to build what we call the mega rail, and it's really going to turn out to be about a $250 million investment when it's all said and done.
It's a big bet.
It's big. But when it's done, what it will do is it moves our capacity from 500,000 containers a year to 1 million rail containers a year. Wow. Right? So that's going to be the largest on-terminal rail facility in North America. And I would tell you, it's 78% complete now. We're using it. It's working really well. We hope to have it fully operational by the end of this calendar year. So that was a major investment. And why did we do that? We did that, as you pointed out, to support, I think, 3 things. Number one, truck power is limited, and people working in trucks are limited. So it's a resource issue there. So we wanted to have alternatives for our customers to connect their freight to wherever they're going. It's not all in Georgia, right? A lot of it is. Atlanta, I said, is a big location. That was number one. Number two is we have a plan to build Network Georgia. And the first level of that was what we call the ARP, the Appalachian Regional Port, which is up in Northwest Georgia. And we invested with the state and with the Murray County in a small inland rail facility, which gets serviced via CSX directly to our terminal. And it's turned out to be a tremendous success. We opened it a little over 2.5 years ago, coming up on 3 years in August. There was nothing there, no business. And since that time, GE Appliances has opened a facility there. Plus you're servicing the carpet capital, the flooring capital now of the world up in Dalton, right? So we've been really impressed. Today, we started with 0 containers. I think this year we'll probably wrap up with about 35,000 containers moving on rail. And when you think about the truck miles that we just talked about getting converted, you're talking about tens of millions of truck miles now not happening. So sustainability wise, it's even better on that side too. That's the second reason. I think the third thing is we have customers saying, hey, you all have a lot of capacity on the terminal side. We want you to help us connect inland even further than Georgia. We want to get to Memphis. We'd like to get to Chicago. And so the mega rail allows us to do that. And that's going to be a longer play for us. We have to make sure it's not just up to the GPA. We have to ensure the railroads, the class 1, CSX, Norfolk Southern want that as well. And they're working with us. And so I would say it's been a tremendous success. And we'll handle this year, we will handle about 550,000 rail containers at the GPA. So
with capacity to go to 1 million,
like with capacity to go to 1 million.
Wow, and so you're halfway there. That's incredible.
Exactly. It's a wonderful thing. So we're growing. It's growing at a good clip. Last month, we haven't shared those numbers yet, but our rail was up almost 40%.
Wow. Year
over year for the month. So it's all good stuff and really coming. But that's that, as you pointed out, that's a long lead. That project will take 5 years from kind of conception to delivery. And so that's a long lead time, and it's a big dollar bet. But again, it's something that I think will pay off in the long term for the GPA.
Yeah, and it couldn't come at a better time. I mean, all the press that's out there now. My business is in trucking a lot, and good people are hard to find. The capacity shortages on trucking. I mean, you got to have trucks to get that final mile, right? Trains aren't pulling up to stores, so it's an ecosystem how it all fits together.
And I think that's the beauty of it. Obviously, the trucks are never going to go away, but we need to take advantage of the resources we have, and that's the beauty of this. Where as you pointed out, you get it to the final mile, then you have the shorter haul connected to its location, and I think it's working out pretty well.
Yeah, best use of the assets and the resources you have, in the industry, not just in your own business.
I think another one I want to share with you,
please,
while we're speaking, is we just recently announced one-stop dock, and that is we're going.
Catchy.
I gotta give Robert Morris credit for the naming of that, but he's our chief communications officer for those who don't know. But this idea is, in our values, one of our values is creativity, kind of going out into the supply chain, identifying what's needed, how we can help, and the Georgia ports is hearing from our customers, the BCOs, that there's not enough cross dock space in the area. We have a large amount of warehousing. We've gone from 70 million to 80 million square feet in the last year, but a lot of it's the big box stuff. So we said, hey, we've got some land close to the port. How about we sit down and take a look at building this and really do it right and provide a sustainable solution, highly electric, right? Electric machinery, trucks, and so forth. And we announced recently we're going to do this, and really excited about it. We're going to build a 300,000 square foot cross dock, and it's just up the road from our terminal. We'll have about 300 doors. We think we can handle approximately 200,000 containers a year through that one building. Wow. And then there's an opportunity to build another one adjacent to it on the same piece of property. Really excited about this. And my hope is that this will be kind of a seed bed for others to come say, why aren't we doing the same thing? And I mean, when I mean others, I mean in the area, that this is really, this cross dock is really the need that the ocean carriers have and the BCOs, because they want to get the container back. They don't want that container to go far into the hinterland, because we all know they need those containers back in Asia or whatever markets they're going to.
Rinse and repeat, get them back and do it again.
Exactly. So.
And that'll be something, the one-stop dock, again, Robert, great title. But the one-stop dock, that'll be something that GPA, just to be clear, that GPA owns and operates, just like you.
Okay, no, good question. So just to be clear, we're going to build it. We are designing it right now with a 3PL who actually works on our facility today.
Okay.
We're going to move them out of that building into this building, and grow their business. So
they'll be
they will
operating.
lease that. They'll operate and lease. In that case, they'll lease the building. Look, we're not experts in that component of the industry. We know it, but we will provide, the Georgia ports will provide the dray back and forth and be the connector from the terminal to the warehouse, which is, I'll call it near terminal. We'll ultimately have a roadway, interterminal roadway connecting the facility to the
terminal itself.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's again, the ingenuity and the private industry focus you guys take as
Yeah.
a quasi public agency is just
Right.
incredible. And like I said earlier on, our listeners know you guys really are a benchmark, and here's just another example of you guys
Thanks.
doing that
Yeah.
and showcasing that. The last I'd be remiss because I was involved in it. I think everybody that was in Savannah and knows that, like you said, the port's not going anywhere. It's kind of geographically located because it's a port. Well, that
Yeah.
means a lot of water. So we've talked all about all the inside the dirt side, rail and trucks and
Sure.
transload facilities, one-stop docks. But what about deepening the water?
Yeah.
How is
How
that
could I
going?
not mention that? That I feel ashamed that you had to point that out for me. No, thank you, and you were very helpful, and then it goes back to your time down here, and so many were. And so really excited to say that the Savannah Harbor Expansion Program, which is now coming to fruition, we have been working on this project for over 20 years now. By the end of this year, the deepening project, which deepens our river from 42 feet at mean low water to 47 feet, the inner harbor. And then if you go outer harbor, it's 44 to 49 feet. That component's done. That's all happening now, and that's needed because I think most of you have heard the story about the bigger ships. As a matter of fact,
if they're not getting stuck in the Suez Canal, right?
Yeah,
They're coming to
you've all seen that. We don't want to talk about it, but the bottom line is the CMA CGM will have the Marco Polo coming next week, and it will be the first 16,000 TEU ship to call the East Coast, and it's coming down the coast right now. So it'll be here on May 26th. But really exciting stuff, yeah. And so the project completes this year.
Well, so just to put it in context for the listeners, so 16,000 TEU ship, if you look back 2 years ago or 5 years ago, what would be the largest? What would be the big headline?
Well,
2,000, 4,000?
No, I would say that, let's go through it. In my time, I've been here 10 years now. When I started here, the largest ship we had was an 8,000 TEU vessel, somewhere around there. So the first big shift that happened was the Panama Canal expansion was completed in 2016. Right.
Yeah.
And literally the week that it was completed, the first 9,000 came, and then after that, 10,000. So that was just 4 to 5 years ago. So in 4 to 5 years, we've gone from an 8,000 to now 16,000 TEU ship, right? So, I mean, that's amazing.
How with the deeper water with Shep and the capacity improvements you're doing on your berths and all the other great investments you're making, what do you think is there a ceiling on the size of vessel that could come through?
What we're doing now is when we look out 10 years, we're planning for a vessel that could go up to 20,000+ TEUs. That's going to take some work. We're not there yet. We have a bridge that is an impediment. We've got things like that. We've got to work on some things, but that's kind of in our sights now. And I think that would be the largest that would come, because that's the largest on the water. And I'm pretty sure that most folks would say they're not going to get much bigger than that 20,000+ TEU ship.
There's probably a level of efficiency that you max out at. But
and one of the things that I think that what's happening in the industry is these really mega vessels are taking a week to turn around. So there's a downside. There are economies of scale, but at some point in time, the payoff's just not there. So I think that certainly from an ocean carrier's perspective, great. But from a shipper, hey, if that ship is important, it arrives Monday and it's not sailing till Friday, that's a real problem, right?
Yeah.
So something that industry has to wrestle with.
No, that's a great point. It's an ecosystem. And so if we look at the investments you're making, and I don't know if you can put a number to it, put you on the spot a little bit, but what will the effects? I said earlier, some of the highlights, $22 billion, $122 billion in revenue, $3.5 billion in state and local taxes. So the return, use your word, on those investments, what does that mean for local businesses? What does that mean for the economy of Georgia?
Well, yeah, I think we can. I think and you're pointing it out, which I appreciate. Every couple of years, we tap into the Terry College School of Business. We say, hey, can you help us understand the economic impact study? And what we've seen is that the number of jobs touched in Georgia kind of fall in line with our TEUs. Let me explain. So when we hit 3 million TEUs, we touched about 300,000 jobs. When we hit 4 million TEUs, it was about 400,000. This year, we will surpass 5 million TEUs annually. Wow. And last year, the Terry College School of Business said, yeah, you're right at 494. And they're not related in that there's a scientific method that they use to calculate it. But it turns out that, every 10 TEUs or so, right, is a job. And so the bottom line is that, we think we're building a facilities here that we can stretch, we think, in the next 4 to 5 years that can go up to 8 million TEUs. And if we do that, that translates into 800,000 jobs touched in Georgia. This is warehousing, manufacturing, trucking, rail, on the ports and off the port, not just on GPA, obviously.
Right.
So we're really excited about that. And that's one of while we're looking for return on projects, those are significant things that we consider as well. It's not only about the return.
Right. Well, those returns are important too, the jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of our charter.
Something that popped in my mind, just for listeners to put it in context, you talked about, doing 5 million TEUs. That's amazing. And going up to 8 million. Well, how does that compare to some other ports? I don't think they're competitors, but like New York or Virginia, Charleston.
Yeah. So I think what you'd see is if you look at port complexes, that's the way I like to do it. So LA Long Beach is really, they're two different ports, but they're one complex servicing a host of customers and a bunch of terminals.
Right.
They're the largest. New York, New Jersey, the second largest. LA is probably in that 15 to 16 million TEU market. New York is probably in the 8 right now, somewhere around there. And we're going to come in at 5. Charleston's half.
So that puts you as number 3?
And we're number 3. Thank you. Yeah, we're number 3 at the 5. I would say number 4, you're talking about the Pacific Northwest, right? And Tacoma, Seattle, Tacoma, Washington, Virginia, and they're kind of in that battle. And they would probably be a little bit, probably about 60% of the size of the GPA, right? And
big drop off from.
Yeah, it is. The Charleston would be about half. So yeah, those, and then it goes down from there, so yeah, those are the kind of, but you look at the 4 corners, right? So you've got Southwest, Northeast, Southeast, Northwest would be kind of the top 4 locations for handling freight.
Yeah.
Container freight. And Houston, I should have said Houston's in there as well. So yeah, that's just container freight alone, not total tonnage, because obviously there's a lot of break bulk ports and ports handling bulk and down in Texas and things like this, or that might be larger in tonnage than that.
Well, from what I remember, and just to build on that a little bit, the non-containerized stuff you guys do is nothing to sneeze at either, right?
Yeah.
Automobiles, maybe just a quick.
We've got the second largest. Let me say this: we go back and forth between second and third largest auto port between Jacksonville and really Brunswick. We'll handle over 600,000 automobiles this year through our ports. And some of the top brands, great stuff, and Kia, right, being a Georgia company, Mercedes, BMW, and Volvo, and so list goes on and on. But yeah, great, exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing all the stuff you guys are into.
Yeah.
Well, look, Griff, we could probably go on for another couple hours talking about all the stuff you've done and are going to do, and wish your team the best. I always like to end up with sort of what's next, and you've already talked a lot about the future of what GPA looks like, but you're well on your way in your journey. You've got a bunch of journey left in you, just looking at you, right, and a lot of great stuff to do. But if you could go back in time in this, the freight journey time machine, if you will, and go back to the Griff Lynch who's just getting out of high school, going into the maritime college up there in New York, what advice or what would you tell the young Griff Lynch starting his career?
It's an interesting question, and I'm going to give credit to one of our board members who has said this. I won't say his name; he might not want that, but it's not my line. But I believe in it, and the line is this: enjoy the journey. And I can tell you, for me personally, I can say honestly, I didn't always enjoy it in that I was worried about this or that. Not that I didn't love what I did, but it was more about the concerns and the worries. And sometimes you just got to be in the moment. And my daughter says this all the time because I'm always thinking, even with the family, what's next? Where are we going next?
Right.
be where your feet are. Enjoy what you're doing. Do it to the best of your ability, and even in the most challenging times, just take it all in and know that in each thing, we all know through adversity we learn the most, right? So
Yeah, it's
I
a
would
great
say
point.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there's success and there's learning.
yeah, exactly. So
For sure. And the other sort of future question, what if you were giving advice to the next generation? Because there's a lot of folks, we struggle as an industry, trucking in particular, to find that next generation of folks to come into our industry. If you were going to give the sales pitch, if you were going to be the Robert Morris, right, of trying to sell and brand, what our industry does, what would you say would be the most exciting or rewarding part of our industry about freight?
listen, I know that technology is critically important as we move forward and embracing technology. But I would tell any young person coming into the industry is, always be thinking about people. At the end of the day, it's still freight doesn't have a personality. People do.
That's
Okay.
right.
And there are people, it's like when I started, there was a big awakening for me in my career when I went from operations into sales. And in operations, we were looking at just efficiency, get the containers on the ship, get the cargo on. And sometimes if it made sense, dollars and cents wise, we cut the cargo, right? I never really had to deal with the customer on the other side when it happened. And I was much younger then, but once I got to be on the other side, the liner side, and saw more about the customer, learn more about them, I think it was really important for me to learn and recognize that there are people making decisions about, and this freight, by the way, is critical to their business and them running their business.
That's right.
And sometimes I think we can lose sight of that because we're looking at a steel box or we're looking at a wire cable, right? So just know that I think for young people, it's really important to understand what the decisions you make, how that impacts downstream a customer of yours.
Mhm.
And we're still doing that every day today. And so this business has been about people. It's about servicing customers and making sure we can get the product on the store shelves at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's what people rely on us for. And so you need to understand that and embrace it, and make sure you're always talking and learning. That never stops, right?
That's
So
great advice.
yeah.
Well, Griff, thanks. It was great. Again, great to see you again. Look forward to seeing you soon in person. And wish your team continued success. As you said, we're all counting on you here in the freight industry to keep building and going and creating all that infrastructure has such an impact on not just Georgia but the whole nation, if not just the East Coast for sure.
Thanks, Paige. And thank you
How
for
can
all the
your
help. Yeah.
Oh no, you're welcome. It'd be
Yeah.
again great to have you. We could go on
Yeah.
forever. Griff, how can our audience learn more about GPA or connect with your team if they're interested in learning more about maybe working for the GPA or partnering
Yeah,
with
well,
GPA?
what I would do is encourage you to go on our website, gaports.com. We also have Facebook, and we're on social media as well. We are posting jobs there. We have a whole human resources section and just daily updates on what's happening in our world. So we'd love for you to check that out, and you can always look us up and call us if you have any questions, or if you're in the area and you want a tour and you're in the business, we love to provide those as well and really educate folks on what's happening here in Savannah and Brunswick.
Yeah, definitely take Griff up on that. It's a sight to
Yeah.
be seen. They say if you've seen one port, you've seen one port, and if you can only see one, you should go
Yeah.
see GPA. Right.
Good line. Good
So
line.
that will wrap up another episode here of the Freight Insider. If you like today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next episode with great executives on their journey, like Griff Lynch, the Executive Director of the Georgia Ports Authority. Thank you again for joining us. And remember to enjoy your own freight journey. It can be a long one, but it's exciting. Thanks.
Thank you.